opportunities for organizations to make investments, but also they could make the wrong investments. And we're going to dig into how do you make sure that your employees and the people you work with and the businesses you work with are making the right investments in people, that they have the right skill sets to work along with the machines. So we're going to have a great panel coming up for this. We've got Julie Sweet, who's CEO of North America at Accenture. We're going to have Igor Turchinsky, who's the founder and chairman and CEO of WorldQuant. David Schreier, who's the futurist from Oxford, and I'm just going to pump your book, David, and he's got a new solutions for cybersecurity. It's out now in all good and online digital bookshops. And we're also joined by Tan Lee, who's founder and CEO of EMOTIV, which itself is creating some extraordinary technology within the neuroscience area as well. So thank you all very much indeed for joining us. Let's kick off, Julie. You've got a whole suite of clients all over the world, in North America in particular. When they look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, and predictive analytics, when you talk to them, what do you think is keeping them awake at night? What excites them and what worries them?
Well, first of all, I would tell you that artificial intelligence is by far, in our history, the fastest growing technology trend. And right now, we literally have hundreds of projects, thousands of people, and they range, and this is the excitement part, from being able to better feed the hungry through precision agriculture, driving up yield and saving resources, to work we're doing with Roche around better managing diabetes, to work we're doing with financial institutions to attack the $3 trillion of illicit funds that are going around in a much more effective way. And so the opportunity today is not about automation, which is where we've been. It's really about taking artificial intelligence, re-engineering processes, putting them with talent, and really, we talk about giving human superpowers. So that's the excitement, and our research says that if you invest today, like the top performing companies, over the next 5 years, you can increase your revenue 38%. Wow. Now, that's huge, right? Now, on the opposite side, on the challenges, there's concerns about how do you do AI responsibly? Not what can you do, what should you do? And there's concerns around transparency, not using data that's biased, and of course, the big question around jobs. And here it is I think there's been too much of a conversation about the robots rising and not enough conversation about what we see as skills. It's not a jobs, but it's a skills.
Well, Dave, just bring you on that, is because people will look at artificial intelligence and machines and go, at some level, corporates might well say, well, that's an opportunity for me to hire less people.
Or lay off a lot of people. So in the financial services industry alone, we think the combination of AI and other automation technologies like blockchain could eliminate 3 million jobs. So what we'd like to see is more organizations investing in reskilling. So, Oxford FinTech is a place where we try and get people to understand what's going on with technology and how to apply it to reshape their careers for the new digital economy. So the average age of our student is 40. They have 15 years of professional experience.
Which belies that basically corporates are doing what you're saying are wrong. Igor, you're constantly at WorldQuant, with both the foundation and everything else, constantly reinvesting in technology. But what's happening to the people that you employ and the people that you work with and the people that are going through your schools program?
So we have WorldQuant University, which is the world's first free program with quantitative finance. And we're doing it because we believe in something called the brilliance cycle, which means that as we take people into our company, we have a social responsibility to educate more people and to give skills for people to work well with the new economy. So that's how that's set up.
But it's the premise actually that as you employ more advanced in technology, you're not cutting the number of people, that you're creating more jobs rather than cutting jobs.
Our jobs, nobody's lost a job because people are constantly learning. Learning is just a big part of our company, and it's built in.
And Russ, what's interesting is we've automated thousands of jobs over the last 2 years, and we reinvested 60% of the savings in order to upskill them in a unit of our business, our operations business, where we were doing double-digit or high single-digit growth, right? And so the idea of what Igor is doing, which is the reinvestment, is really critical.
Tom, just bring me in and just explain a little bit about what your technology does and the impact that it's having with the people that are using it and in the space, because I think that would be quite illustrative.
Yeah, so we use machine learning to do both translational algorithms as well as predictive algorithms, but focused solely on the human brain. So we are trying to look at the entire equation of, we've got 7 billion people on the planet. So many of them are going through this whole challenge of reskilling. We have a lot of people that need to learn, that need to be optimized for learning new things in order to fit into this challenge of the fourth industrial revolution. And we also have adults that need to acquire new skills and to be retrained to be relevant to the workforce in the next few years. And so at the core of that is understanding humans and their brain, their cognitive load, their attention, their focus, their abilities, so that you can really personalize and tailor whatever it is you're doing to truly take into account that individual person through unprecedented insight that we can derive directly from their brain.
And as the technology evolves, how do businesses have to adapt? How does the workforce have to adapt? I mean, Igor, you're part of what WorldQuant University does is giving people the skills to work with new technology. And
you hit on an important word, giving. He's not charging for that master's degree.
It's free. It's completely free. So we, as things change, the rate of change is exponential. So this, requires a change to the educational system. And re-educating people continuously becomes necessary. And the WorldQuant University has one of its goals, a way to deal with that by making a very efficient process. We think that education should be almost like a Google search. You type up, give me a PhD in math, and you get all the coursework coming out of there.
But this strikes me, this is incredibly important because as you get more analytics, I mean, you could get good analytics and bad analytics, and good interpretation and bad interpretation. So therefore, presumably, we need the skill sets to deal with that.
Yeah, and there are two problems that I've been seeing crop up repeatedly. So one of them is simply failed understanding of math. So for example, you can do better credit scoring to lend to the unbanked or bank the unbanked using new statistical and behavioral analytics methods. But some people said, hey, I could take your social media data from Facebook and create a credit score, and they've raised an inordinate amount of money for that, and it's actually statistically flawed. It's about as bad as random chance. It's a terrible way to lend. Whereas, on the other hand, we have misapplication of data analytics. For example, there was a very large financial institution that was using an automated lending model, and they were saying, wow, our results are fantastic, and they discovered the machine learning system had taught itself to redline a particular neighborhood and not make loans there. And they only found it when they did their technology audit. So we try to tell our students about not just the science of data science, but also the ethics of data science. And so an idea I've been playing around with is this concept of responsible innovation, as opposed to simply innovation.
And your point is absolutely right, because as technology pioneers, as people who are inventing this new space, we have a responsibility to steward that future forward. And so being very mindful of what future we're going to create is fundamental. And so to that point, inclusivity and access is key.
And how are organizations dealing with this today? Because clearly the evidence is they can make big mistakes, but they can make big changes and get it very, very right. So what do they have to implement today to make the most of this? Well,
I think one of the major issues we face today is what kind of leaders do we need? And I think at a macro level, what you're seeing WorldQuant do gets to the heart of a question of our time. How can we as leaders grab the economic opportunities for our companies and our shareholders and make sure that we're also benefiting society? And I think WorldQuant is a great model of that. And you've chosen to do it through the universities. It's addressing skills. You're providing it free. There's lots of different models. But there's also the leaders who have to think about the ethical considerations And we spent a lot of time thinking about how do we develop those leaders, because those are not core competencies. It's beyond saying a leader needs to represent our core values and have a strong moral compass, right? It's a broader set of thinking and issues. And so we're doing a lot of work on developing, not just, obviously there's tone at the top, but actually developing those skills.
How do you monitor it with your own business? This is a constant.
It's a very challenging thing when you're dealing with machine learning, and this is a classic challenge that we all have. Most of the neurotechnology and most of our data sets traditionally has come from Western educated communities and societies. And so what happens with that is that you build implicit bias into your algorithms so that it works very well on a certain subset of the population. So one of the things that we're doing is directly to address that is to build a global network of neurolabs in underserved regions of the world where we can deploy neurotechnology at a very affordable level so that we can collect data to allow us to see the diversity of real brains, right? Brains that is representative of our world, because without that, we're going to build bias into our algorithms without even being cognizant of it. You find, so that's it's a real big challenge.
Who's deciding how you then do with that, what you do with that data and how you use it for then what your next steps are? So, how does that input take place?
It really depends on what it is that we want to find a question around. So, during this Davos, there's been a lot of questions circulating about disinformation. And how do you tell the difference between, information, misinformation, disinformation? What impact does that have? And we have a very unique opportunity to deploy very, very simple tests, for example, to a larger population sample just to see how the brain actually responds to that and why does it trigger, what is it that grabs people's attention? What is it that makes their emotions change in a certain way that then makes them share that information or drives that misinformation forward? So I think there's a lot of opportunities there for us to leverage something like this information that we have and this capacity that we have around scalable neurotechnology to really take knowledge of the humans or human beings to a level that we really couldn't have had insight about.
And that point on scale is incredibly important. So now, today, we can get much more data about people and use it for good. This is things the machine systems were not capable of keeping up with that data 5 or 10 years ago. Now we have computational systems that actually can help transform societies based on this behavioral data and analytic data that we can acquire from things like the humble cell phone.
And who is in the best position now, do you think, to be able to take advantage of this, and which are the industries or the businesses that aren't?
I mean, I really cannot think of an industry that can't take advantage of it, because if you need intelligence, and artificial intelligence is going to be able to augment, right, human beings. And I think, one of the exciting things about artificial intelligence is the ability to do everything from, find better ways to feed the hungry. I mean, if you look ahead, in the next 50 years, we need to produce more food than the last 10,000 years combined, right? There's a commercial application there, and there's a very important application in terms of solving some of the world's biggest hungers. We're seeing this, we just did something with elder care, right, where we're building on very quickly in a quick pilot on existing technology, how to have more elderly be able to stay at home. It's solving a problem. Many countries like the UK where we did this are facing, doubling of their elderly population, but it's also an economic issue because how do you care for them? And so it's that combination of, of being able to solve the world's problems, company problems, and really across industry.
And it's not just benefiting companies, it's also potentially benefiting the individual as well.
Yes.
So this type of information can inform you to be better at what, to really get to your own personal potential. It can help your employer create better workplace environments that suit you so that you can really have a much better, much more productive workplace environment. And it helps the companies, therefore, also generate much greater wealth and return because you've got a far more engaged and far more sophisticated and productive workforce.
Igor, does that sort of feed back into your brilliant cycle theory in a way? Everything becomes self-fulfilling and helps each other.
Everything becomes self-fulfilling, but I have to say that our company has been doing this for a very, very long time. So it's all built into the system. Everything is automated, everything's formulaic, everything's just designed to work this way. So that's why we're not losing jobs. And
so what do you find you have to do to maximize it? What's the thing that you have to stay on top of to get the most out of it?
The thing you have to do is you have to remember that you're in an exponential age, and you have to keep setting exponentially increasing goals. We have trading signals called alphas, and we used to have 150 of them. Now we have 10 million of them, going on 20 million by the end of the year. So you have to keep setting these goals that sound crazy to keep going up the curve.
And the pace of change is accelerating on that geometric curve. So you need to reskill, and AI can be your friend. You know, if an AI understands how you work and understands how your coworkers work, it can coach you day by day, minute to minute, on how to do your job better. That's the ideal future of where AI and people actually are working together rather than one replacing the other.
Yeah, well, but then I'm interested in when you have self-learning with AI and machines. You know, how far does it go where they really are taking all the decisions? Do we see that?
We have this already in our company. We have researchers, and the way they do research has been encoded, and now the machines are copying the way the researchers do the research. But the researchers, instead of working on the way on what they used to work, are working on the next higher level of abstraction, thinking up of better ways, like to merge the processes and so on. So it's like a never-ending cycle of efficiency.
I'm with David on this. I think that it's something that we will create a much more symbiotic relationship with AI, and it's not one replacing the other, but it's an augmentation of intelligence for humans. And this is something we've been doing for thousands of years. It's not something new.
This is equivalent to working with a plough.
It is.
Because we're uncomfortable with it intrinsically.
Right.
But we've got to think of it that way.
It's just like me wearing glasses or contact lenses. Right. It's an augmentation of my
except that the plough doesn't speak back to me. The plough doesn't give me ideas of what to do.
Right, but the idea would be, if I'm feeling tired, it would give me the perfect dose of caffeine just to prop me up, right? If it knows I'm going to walk out onto the street, it will prompt me the directions, right? So the idea would be, it would be so integrated, so seamless with you that you wouldn't even notice that it was there, but it would augment and complement your capacity so that you would be a much better version of yourself.
Well, and to that point, I mean, we're already seeing that, right? We're working with a large manufacturer that's using artificial intelligence and virtual reality to train its workers, and the artificial intelligence is able to evaluate skills and provide different training. And so they're doing digital retraining at scale, right? So that's helping the individual in this seamless way. And we're using it today. I mean, it's very interesting, this idea of pairing. So we work with a company that does, through gamification, when they apply for our jobs, they will figure out whether they're actually a fit. And what's interesting is whoever has joined the platform, if they're not a fit for us, they're able to go to other companies and find where they are.
Is that not? Because that's
right. Pyrometrics. I mean, it's an incredibly valuable platform, and to your point, helps people better understand their futures.
You've all mentioned the huge opportunity, and you've all come up with another word: responsibility. So let's just for a little moment look at the flip side of this and what the potential is if it's irresponsible. How do we, or look at this, how do we ensure that this is used for the betterment and the good? Because clearly the potential, as you've all illustrated, is enormous. Well, how do we keep it on the right side?
It's a terrifying thought, right? Today, the Oxfam released data that's now has been updated to state that 1% of the world's population, the top 1%, controls 82%, not 73%. Of the world's wealth. So that massive increase is terrifying. For someone working in neurotechnology, which is a fundamental augmentation that we could have that would transform our own capacity as human beings, that for me, the biggest responsibility is to make sure that that technology is available for everyone. Because we don't want to encourage greater disparity and amplify that through just cognitive capabilities on top of the wealth disparity, right? Because then you're amplifying opportunity, you're amplifying capabilities. And so, what you're doing is incredible because you're trying to level the playing field with education. But how do, with some of these new augmentation technologies that are going to come about, the key is to make sure that we make it as affordable and as accessible as possible.
Yeah, well, and AI is a tool. The ethics of AI are driven by the ethics of the user. So I think if we teach people to be thoughtful about their decisions and how they are responsible for their actions, those people in turn will apply the AI to problems, for example, of financial inclusion or educational inclusion rather than, so what percentage of your students are from Nigeria? I mean, from the emerging markets, let's make it more broad.
50% from the emerging markets.
It's incredible. I can't think of a single tier one educational institution that can make that claim of, we have that diverse a student body, economically diverse.
Is that the biggest opportunity you got? Actually, this technology just have the ability to really bring greater economic growth to the developing world than anything else.
I think there's a tremendous opportunity there. The world is big, talent is distributed equally, opportunity is not, and you want to arbitrage this difference, essentially. And I think the companies that do this, that understand this, will simply surpass those that don't.
As we go forward further down the future, clearly what you've said is the most powerful thing is man working with machine. Should we fear, will it ever be possible where it's machine replacing man?
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone's afraid of Skynet, right? And if we extend it a little further, everyone's afraid of Minority Report. But Minority Report is a wonderful fiction. If you look at it, the failure was not in the technology, it was in the ethics of the guy who controlled the technology. So I think we need to be very transparent and open about our motivations. And I think we should hold our leaders accountable. So I had an interesting conversation this morning with a brilliant technologist. He's got this next generation breakthrough network technology. And we were having the conversations we've had several times at DAVOS about how many women are on panels. And this one, I will note, is at parity.
If I was half and half, then we'd be perfect.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I said to him, well, how are you thinking about hiring women into your company? He said, well, women don't like computer science. They don't like staring at screens. And I was slack-jawed because I didn't know how to respond to that. And I say, that's a failure of education. The fact that he's now, I think, 38 years old and no one has had the conversation with him about the consequences of his own choices and actions as a leader. And that's where I think, yeah, there's a risk we could have Skynet or Minority Report, but let's avoid that future so it's not inevitable by the conscious agency that we can employ.
And that comes back to the re-education and the re-education at C-suite and actually mid-management. Are you comfortable that's happening now? Has that still got to happen? People have got to start engaging. We need more WorldQuant solutions.
I'm optimistic because I think at the very top, as we work across our clients, there's no client that's coming to us and talking about artificial intelligence, but not also talking about how do we be responsible. So I think from that perspective, I am confident we'll get there, but we need to accelerate sort of going on down. And the one thing that I do find disturbing is we've just done this research where we looked at the increase in spending, 60% last year on AI, and yet only 3% of executives were significantly increasing their spending on training. That gap cannot continue, and we really fulfill the responsibility that we have as companies to bring people along and help them upskill. So we need more WorldQuants, and that does concern me.
If you were going to, Dave, leave us with a thought. If you're going to peer into the future, what even pick a time frame, 10, 15 years, how different, or 20 years will be different from where we are today?
I think it would be very different because AI and other technologies like it would be completely integrated into our lives. We wouldn't notice it. It would be invisible. So we just talk to Siri all the time without really thinking about the amount of AI technology we're using there. Take it a step further where We just go through our lives and, the cup of coffee is ready for us because the AI knew to order it, and the memo we needed was sitting in our, heads-up display in our glasses because the AI had gone out as our agent, and it knew what we wanted, and it found the thing we needed and put it in front of us, freeing up people to focus on the more creative and higher order functions.
What's the most exciting, in this space, what's the most exciting thing you've seen, let's tell you, that you've heard in this space that you've gone, that's truly transformative?
So I'm a breast cancer survivor, and the work that a Harvard team did, a Harvard team of pathologists, where they looked at human doctors reading pathology and machines, and there was 96% accuracy for the humans, 92% for the machines, but when they put them together, they got to 99.5% accuracy, right? That's exciting.
And
so many things are exciting. It's hard to choose any one exciting things. At WorldQuant, we keep seeing geometric increases in productivity, often through combining humans with machines. And back to the old questions, machines are not going to replace humans any more than apples are going to replace oranges. It's just two different things.
Well, what I'm most excited about is what I'm doing with my startup, Distilled Analytics, where we're using behavioral analytics to create biometric identity. So on the one hand, it can help financial institutions improve their AML KYC by 1,000%. But on the other hand, it can create a platform for identity inclusion to bring the 1.1 billion people in the world who lack a legal identity in the eyes of the system into the system.
And I think that what keeps coming back, and the number of panels we've discussed at DAVOS, is the ability for the changing technology to really help the developing world more so than the developed world, even though there are great gains to be made there. I mean, in your space, where do you think your technology, what your capability will be? What's exciting you most about what you think you'll be doing in the next 5 years?
Well, it was very exciting last year to see, for the very first time, a person who was paralysed from the neck down use our technology to drive a Formula One car, just using his mind. So no wheels, no pedals.
This is real. This is real Spock territory.
This is really quite complex translational algorithms. The thing that I'm excited about the predictive algorithms, but to your point about Minority Report, we must remember it's predictive, so it's about a confidence level. It is not absolute. Mm-hmm. So just because it thinks I'm feeling tired, I want this much dosage, it's never perfect. So there's always room for it to be not correct, right? Mm-hmm. There's that. It's just a confidence level around predictive algorithms. So we have to always bear that in mind in whatever it is that we're doing with machine learning.
Yeah. In the future, we will all be statisticians.
Correct. I think it's very exciting. I think the future for me, as I look forward, it's really about augmentation of our species and building a much more symbiotic relationship with machines, but hopefully in a way that will bring the rest of the world.
Are you hopeful that actually it will enable mankind to have a more symbiotic relationship with the planet and its host? And can we be that optimistic for this?
I think it's about what we want it to be. The future is not written. Mm-hmm. It is something that we are going to invent and we are going to create based on our value systems and what we devote our energy and passions towards. This technology wouldn't have existed if I didn't start this company and create it and invent this technology and the team around me to make it happen. And it's a product of our passions and our devotion. So I think we have a white paper ahead of it. It's a blank page, and we can really drive it forward the way that we want to.
Just bring back, because I think you mentioned productivity. And coming out of the UK, everybody's always kind of querying the productivity issue in the UK. Presumably, this man working with machine, as you've rightly pointed out in your illustrations, we get a lot more output for the hours spent. So, even in the UK, it might even help our productivity issue. But that's the principle, though. Is that man plus machine is much more powerful than man on his own or machine on his own, even if you're doing the World Chess Championships.
Absolutely, and we're seeing it really happen, right? We're working with an oil and gas company in the U.S. There's been a shale revolution, so lots of wells, and you have workers who are going out and checking every well, and they have a high rate of injury, they're fatigued, and through artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things and the combination, they're now able to go to the wells they need to go to and not. It's helped safety, it's increased productivity, and very importantly, you have much happier people because they're not as tired and they're not getting injured on the job. So there's just use case after use case where we're seeing those kinds of productivity gains coupled with better jobs.
Are we all going to have to, in a way, be data scientists? Can some, how do we?
I'm in trouble if that's true.
No, I mean we're all going to have to be data literate.
Yeah,
we have an innumeracy problem that's only been getting worse. We need to fix that. And if we do, then we'll be able to get the most out of these systems that we're now playing with. But we also, so all my best ideas come from science fiction. So there's this wonderful author, Richard K. Morgan, and he's written about this sort of semi-dystopic future where, the UN regulates AI. And then this week I was talking to a governmental official where multiple governments are now beginning to put together AI ethics and regulation committees in anticipation of coming legal instrumentation. So what we need to do as technologists and as business leaders and as thought leaders is help them build responsible regulation so we don't end up with something that destroys innovation or that inadvertently makes AI take away jobs, but rather that we have responsible AI with our...
Well, that was going to be really one of my final points, is where governments currently sit on this, and do they have a thought on it? If they do, what is it? And how are they thinking about that? Well, are we right at the beginning of them starting to get to grips with it?
Some regulators and lawmakers are in the thick of it and going all the way with discussions with entrepreneurs and scientists and getting educated, and others have the attitude of, it's new technology, let's make it illegal. And so we think that that's an overreaction. We think that too much regulation inhibits the ability to actually deal with technology in a responsible way, and that principles-based regulation can actually help us with AI. So rather than saying we have to make a law for every possible application of AI, we develop some broader principles that let us apply it to society in a constructive fashion.
Yeah, Igor, are you worried? I mean, you have come from an industry that has gone through massive regulatory change and is highly regulated.
Do you want more?
To answer that question, how do you regulate something that's moving at exponentially increasing speeds? That's not to say that it can't be regulated, but we need bodies of people who understand and who are top-notch in an area that's being regulated. So expert.
I think some of those people will need to go onto a WorldQuant master's course, I think, to... I mean,
everybody should sign up for WorldQuant University.
But I get your point, and that's the challenge. All of us have got to aspire to understand more, and how we do that is a challenge for the entire education society, because old colleges and old ways are not teaching the new skills.
Well, Oxford, I'll say, is
apart from some notable exceptions.
Oxford is taking steps ahead of many of its peers and actually trying to educate people in the new skills. But I agree with you. Many academic institutions are sticking their heads in the sand around how to engage with a global audience. We have students from over 120 countries on our online fintech program.
Yeah, there's also a great opportunity for us to simplify the systems and apply design thinking to some of the things that we're doing to bring more people along with us. Of course, there are specific domain areas where you do need to have a PhD, and it's very specialized, but not all things will need to have that specialization. We can bring a large part of the population by simplifying and making some of the tools a lot more accessible. So take an example. Sometimes with pills that you take, if you have a chronic illness, adherence is a big problem. If we rely on human behavior to change, it is a really we're fighting an uphill battle, right? You've got, say, take the case of HIV drugs. 13 pills that you would traditionally take. Lots of people just don't adhere to that schedule. If you simplify that down to 1, which is the case today, you have much greater adherence. And that's what we can do with technology, taking that same analog. If we can simplify the tools, the APIs, the engagement models, we can bring a lot more people with us. Of course, there will be areas where we will need a PhD in order to really engage deeply with that technology, but that is not the only way to engage with these.
Just at a consumer level, will it matter, when we talk about responsibility, will it matter whether consumers know whether they're dealing with AI or real people? Will it matter where there's such a blurring of the lines? Will that bother consumers? You already pick up a phone now and you go through, you're talking to a computer effectively. Well, some people realise, some people don't. That's
often a bother, but a lot of people are now interacting with chatbots, and they don't know that they're interacting with chatbots. And frankly, they're getting better answers than an old, press 5 if you'd like to press 6 for the next thing that you have to press. Yeah. Yes,
it is slightly better. The language has got to improve. Which takes me to, I guess, to a final point, which is the one thing, you've all sort of said, look, machine will never replace man. Do you think there will come a time when machines or AI develops an emotional intelligence? Because for me, it's the emotional side of human beings that keep man separate, to what is, or keeps animals separate. Do you see a time when a machine will understand emotion, intelligence, and in a way learn that?
Well, you go ahead.
Should I go first? Okay. I think this is a very difficult question. That what I personally believe is that no, you cannot teach machines to have emotions. A thermostat cannot be sad, if you don't use it on a given day. And there's a big difference between men and machines that's not entirely understood yet, but the difference is there.
We today can detect emotional intelligence through machines, through machine learning. So Sandy Pentland's social physics is what we're using in my company, and so we can measure social interactions. The machines can measure emotional interaction, emotional intelligence. Does that mean the machine has feelings? No. Could we simulate feelings? Sure. If you had a sad light switch that would tell you, don't forget to turn me off when you leave the house, maybe you'd save some electricity. But I think the sad thermostat is actually kind of a brilliant idea. Yeah. But there's something in there.
Let's start a company.
People are already sort of naming their car and naming their phone, and they already have an emotional relationship. We could make it two-way. We have the technology to do it. Should we? I'd have to think about it.
I agree with David. I think that's absolutely right. We can certainly measure and understand emotional intelligence because, we're just a bunch of chemical reactions. Mm-hmm. If we go down to the fundamental science, we can decode that and we can give that information back to a machine so it can understand. It's hard for a machine to observe behavioral characteristics, but once we boil it down to the fundamental science of chemistry and biology, I think that's quite feasible for a machine to decode our behavioral traits and our cognitive and mental states, but whether or not they have actual emotions or not, and whether we can simulate that in a way that's meaningful, that's another question.
Well, I've got to say, look, thank you so much. It's been hugely enjoyable to speak to you, and I'm sure everybody's enjoyed listening to you as well. I can let you know everything you've said has been analysed. It's already predicting what you're going to do next and what you're going to have for dinner tonight, so you'll get those reports at the end. But it's a brave new world. The opportunities are extraordinary, and we all appreciate your time as well. Julie, Igor, David, and Tan, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.